Okay, so I've got Ian Banks with me today. Ian's with 5Q, and man, I am so excited to have Ian and hear what he's going to share with us. Ian, first, before we dive into the session itself, tell me a little bit, just how was it that you came to be at 5Q?
I started my career in technology at a nonprofit organization and ended up meeting Chad through a conference designed for Christians in digital. I think it was called Digital Ministry Conference, something like that. And Chad and I met and had lunch and kept tabs over the next couple of years. And eventually 5Q was opening up a position, and I was like, I really want to work with those guys. And so I applied and didn't get a job the first time, and then applied a year later, and the time was just right, and ended up here, and I've been here for 6 years now.
That's awesome. You know what, you reminded me, the Digital Ministry Conference. So 5Q is hosting a digital ministry conference, but it's obviously not new with us.
Yeah.
So others have done it over the years. I think though, it's been a couple years since I've seen any type of conference around this concept of doing ministry in the digital space, really focus there. So that's
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. And I still remember that. I still remember meeting you and interacting with you and hanging out with you. And I'm just thrilled for the last 6 years being able to serve alongside of you, and just being able to serve many ministries in the 6 years time frame.
Yeah, same here.
So one of the things that we're going to be talking on is helping ministries be more agile in their approach to ministering online. And I know that's something that's real dear to your heart, especially some of the readings that you've been leading, some of the things that 5Q through. So could you just tell a little bit more about what you're planning and what folks can plan to hear when they come to your session?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2020 has been a tough year for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And coming from a nonprofit background, having started my career there, one of the things I noticed was, we tended to be behind the times when it came to technology and trends. And there are some organizations that are doing it really well. And there's some organizations that up until now had the luxury of waiting until the time was right for them. But now we've got COVID-19 and everybody's having to social distance. Lots of people are suddenly working from home. And now these organizations that have been kind of waiting and not entirely sure how to jump into this are suddenly struggling because they don't have the experience. They don't know who to talk to. So my session is going to be about, what can you do as a ministry in 2020 to kind of jump into the deep end and survive, so to speak.
Man, yeah, no, that's really good. What, just thinking about your experience both at other nonprofits that you've worked with and at 5Q, what would you say is a key element of learning to be agile, learning to dive into the deep end, and learning to do the right things when it comes to being agile in ministry?
Yeah. One thing, outside perspective, we all have our own bubbles that we are living in, whether we know about it or not. So if you're in your building at your office, you're talking with the same people all the time. Eventually, the ideas that you all have start to be relatively similar. And so getting an outside perspective, whether it's from an agency or from just reading up on what the current trends are,
or attending
that's always going to be
conferences.
helpful. Exactly. Attending conferences is one of the best ways to find out what's going on. If you don't do any of those things, if you're not actively learning, then, what could have been an amazing technology, an amazing strategy a year ago, 6 months ago, 5 years ago, might just be completely obsolete now. At one point in time, I'll go social media for a second. We used to have something called MySpace. And MySpace was the king of social media. And now it basically doesn't exist anymore, at least not in the same way that it used to. So things like that, technology is constantly changing. It's getting faster and faster and faster and faster. And we users of digital,
Yeah.
and we as ministers, that's kind of what we do. We have to be able to identify what these trends are and pivot very quickly. And along with that, we have to figure out, okay, at what point in time is this, how do we determine if this is something that's going to
Hmm.
last for us, or if it's something that absolutely doesn't work. So that way we're not saying, oh yeah, we have to commit, the next year, 5 years to something that maybe costs a lot of money or resources and maybe just doesn't do any good. And so figuring out some of those things, doing lots of testing, trying lots of things, not being afraid to fail in some of those things, fail forward, I think is one of the things that ministries can really take out of this.
That's fantastic. Just as far as learning to get out of our bubble, learning to interact, see what others are doing. I think that coming to the Digital Ministry Conference is that we're going to be holding on June 17th is a great way for a person to do that. We're going to have lots of different speakers on lots of different topics that are relevant to today, whether it be fundraising in the fundraising in a post-COVID era, or around financial management in a crisis, or learning to be agile for your ministry, like Ian's going to be talking about. We're going to hear case studies on personalization at scale and how to pivot in the middle. In fact, you're going to be leading another session on dialoguing with the ministry that actually worked this out with right as COVID was happening. Talk a little bit about that in that session.
That's right. Yeah. So we're going to be talking with Revive Our Hearts team that was able to pivot incredibly quickly when COVID-19 was kind of first starting to affect us in America. So around the time when cities and states were starting to figure out, oh, maybe we should lock down, maybe we should start social distancing, and people were starting to work from home, very quickly, the Revive Our Hearts team was able to identify valuable content and valuable resources that they had and ways to get out to their user base, which in this case is a lot of women. That's their primary focus, is ministering to women. And they're able to get that out very quickly in a very tangible way. And they're actually creating a very unique community, sub-community around the community that they've already had, which is a really amazing thing. So in that session, we'll be hearing about how they did it, and we'll be able to hopefully gain some good insights into their entire strategy and what led to that.
Very good. Yeah, super excited to have the Revive Our Hearts team there. And so let me ask you this: with the two sessions that you're leading, who would be the ideal audience? Who should this be a not miss session for coming to these?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say anybody who's struggling with communicating with your team in this COVID crisis, because that's a big thing. Suddenly figuring out how are you going to communicate with your team, how are you going to get stuff done. Anybody who's struggling with all of their processes. A lot of processes tend to be internal, physical, in the office. Really anybody who's feeling overwhelmed, whether you are the CEO, whether you are, the web developer, whether you're the content creator, or the person who's responsible for donor initiatives. These are, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this that's going on and trying to figure out what are some ways that you can create value for your organization and create value for your donors, for your constituents, this will be a great session for you.
Very good. Yeah. I think, like you said, whether you're a decision maker or a practitioner in the digital space, man, you really, these are can't miss sessions for you.
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm going to ask you another question that you weren't prepared for. And so I'm excited to hear your answer, but you've been leading the 5Q team through a book. Specifically, the book is called I want to say the Phoenix Project. It's the Unicorn Project, kind of the second book in a series that we've been doing as a company, as a team. Uh, what is it about that book that you have really latched onto and have really appreciated? And is there any ties there between the Unicorn Project book and concepts in there and a ministry learning to be agile?
Oh, absolutely. One of the key concepts in the book, The Unicorn Project, is um, kind of forming natural teams. And so when you're in an organization, whether it's a business or a nonprofit, and you've got these strict silos, oftentimes you're not necessarily interacting with your coworkers to the capacity that you could be. And so if you're able to kind of break down some of those barriers and work together as a team for certain things, you're actually able to um, get new ideas. So there's that outside perspective. You're able to figure out new ways of implementing things and ways to make things easier for your own team as well as for your constituents themselves. That's one of the great things that I've learned about from this book. Another great thing is just how do you handle work? We all have work that we have to do. And one of the things that they talk about in this book is managing the flow of work. And that's changed a lot of kind of how I'm functioning here at 5Q. And we're starting to implement some of these practices as well. But just kind of seeing like, from one state to the next and from handing off from maybe one department to the next department to do the next thing, how can we manage the flow of work so work's not piling up on one person and getting stuck, and people are dropping the ball, not because they're not capable of what they're doing, but maybe the flow of work is just not at the proper speed. Maybe it's going too fast.
So learning how to remove the bottlenecks to keep the workflow flowing through. And that's really good, really good. Well, Ian, again, we're thrilled to have you as both a panel facilitator, as well as leading a session on learning to be agile in the ministry, in the space. So we're thrilled to have you there. And for everybody else, really encourage you to sign up for the Digital Ministry Conference. It's going to be June 17 and 18.